All right, welcome back. Professor Uche Uwaleke is with me right here at the table. And we'll be looking at the state of the Nigerian economy, regarding everything that is happening. Prof, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nancy.
How are you today?
I'm fine, and you?
In fact, when can we stop speaking about these things? Because do you get tired of things like this? Because like year in, year out, we talk about it. Just a little change or a very minute change. Sometimes it doesn't change. Do you really get tired of saying these things?
You see, that is the nature of the economy, particularly for a developing economy. You are bound to see some of these changes, some of these trials, experiments, and so on. Which is why I think the 2022 budget proposal, if you permit me to start with that, has a lot of things within it that are capable of changing the narrative if well implemented. The first point to note is what many analysts have also pointed out, and it's good we emphasize it because it's something that is worth encouraging, and that's the timely presentation of the appropriation bill. That is a practice that started, the previous year. You recall that in 2020, the president, too, in the month of October, presented the 2021 appropriation bill, and that, to a large extent, contributed to the relatively improved performance in budget implementation we've witnessed, so far. So timely presentation is very key, and the fact that the government has succeeded to realign the budget year with the calendar year is also something worth commending, because what that has done is that first, it tells the business community, it tells the public that the government is serious about, hitting the ground running, and which explains why, or partly explains why, we saw, even in the stock market, the stock market received the news of the appropriation bill, favorably. The market was up all throughout last week. And the particular day it was announced the president was going to make the presentation, I think it was on Tuesday, the market witnessed the strongest gain. And all through last week, as I said, the market was up. Yes, we saw some profit taking yesterday, but just before I stepped in here, the market is still in the green by about 1.15%. So the point I'm making is there's an information content, there's a signaling property that has when the thing is done, in good time. It boosts confidence. So that aside, if I am to speak specifically on the parameters of,
we'll come to that, Prof.
All right.
We'll come to that. I just want us to take it slow so that people can understand. Let's be coming down.
Yes,
like they say, let's be coming down. So let's take it calmly. I'll come back to that.
Yes.
I have the budget proposal here with me, so we'll try as much as possible to dissect it.
Okay,
From what you've just said, you just gave a breakdown of how the market reacted last week because of what the president did.
Yes.
Because of that announcement.
Announcement effect.
Yes, of the 2022 budget proposal. So the market said, okay, it's like this, the government is a bit serious in terms of timeliness and all of that.
Beautiful.
So the market went up.
Yes.
I'll come back to the issue of the market a bit later too. But where I'm going to precisely is the essence of announcement. The importance and significance of what comes out of government officials' mouth. And that takes me to the first story which we had on our business news today, that the Vice President is calling for the devaluation of the Naira. He did that at the midterm retreat. Yes, you just brought me out of my den because of what you said.
Yes, yes.
So how important is that? Because when I saw that yesterday, I was like, oh, okay, what exactly is happening?
Absolutely.
we've seen at least the school of thought over the past how many years?
Yes.
Can you devalue the Naira? That if you devalue the Naira, you know, the foreign investors will come in, this and this and that.
Yes.
As a professor, please explain whether I don't, whether I don't understand some of these things, you know. But
yes.
just explain also in a simple term.
Yes. Well, let me start by saying that, of course, the VP means well. Let's not, mask that fact. He means well. But talking about announcement effect, in my opinion, I think the timing, was wrong or not too appropriate. And that's because the appropriation bill has just been, presented to the National Assembly. And this appropriation bill, which was drawn from the medium-term expenditure framework, has 410.15 naira, to the dollar as the benchmark exchange rate. Okay, so the 2022 budget proposals already based on 410.15 exchange rate. Okay, and people had argued that that exchange rate doesn't appear realistic given what we have in the parallel market. But the point is this, that when you base your budget proposal on a future exchange rate, imagine if the central bank had, if the government had said, okay, for 2022 budget, the exchange rate would be, say, 550 or 530. Meanwhile, the official exchange rate we have today is 410.15. What do you think would happen if government had announced that the exchange rate for 2022 budget would be 520?
And not 410.
And not 410. What will happen? The natural thing for people to do would be to go and hoard. So as to take advantage. So you're already signaling that you will devalue. Okay, so now that the exchange rate has been done at 410, okay, I would have expected that that should have been the the case. So going now to announce that or to suggest, coming from that kind of level, that the Naira is overvalued, because that's what it means. If you're saying the Naira should have been 570 and not 410, it means at 410 is overvalued. That's the implication.
Yeah.
So, given that kind of signal, again, you may also find economic agents reacting to it. You may also find even the market, also reacting to it. Because now there is the tendency that when the chips are down, the Naira will be, devalued. And talking about Naira devaluation, do I agree that it's something we should even do now? Okay. I am in a position, first of all, when I got the VP's statement, I sent a reaction to a platform that I belong to, a platform that has professors of economics, professors of finance, professors of management, accounting, and so on. And even up to now, that platform is, it triggered a deluge of reactions, debates, with people on both sides. But the fact is, and the reality is, that as far as I'm concerned, the fundamentals are not ripe for devaluation of the Naira. You said I should explain it. And let me also try to explain. You see, why do countries devalue?
Yes, I was coming to that.
Yes.
The reasons for devaluation.
Yes, the major reason you will find a country devaluing its currency is to promote exports, to reduce imports and promote exports. So when you now do that, it helps your trade balance.
When you export, you have more Naira for the dollars.
Yes, you want to be in a position to export more, because when you devalue, it makes imports more expensive. So it makes your exports cheaper. So you can export more, get more forex, and of course stabilize your forex market. And theoretically, that is what it is. But come to think of it, Nancy, in this situation, in the Nigerian situation, what and what do we export? Okay, so devaluing with the expectation that it will promote exports, it will, to me, tantamounts to putting the cart before the horse. The productive base has not been expanded. You have not diversified your export base, and you're talking of export. We made that mistake during the SAP era, because during the SAP era, SAP was meant to, diversify the economy, and so on. And we were asked to devalue as a means to expand export. But did that work? It didn't work, because the productive base wasn't there. Okay, and if you notice too, since 2014, we have been on this path of Naira devaluation. In 2014, November, I recall, the central bank then devalued the Naira from 155 to 168.
69, yeah.
3 months after, about January, it was devalued again to 198. Since then, it has been the same journey. We're at 1.305, 360, now 410. When will it end? So even if you devalue again and say, okay, the parallel market rate is 575, and some people are even saying that represents the equilibrium price, which I disagree, because that has a lot of speculative components in it. So even if you devalue to 575 today, the parallel market rate will not be 575; it will also shift, and so you will have a process that has no end. So the solution to me is not devaluation. Particularly now, what I'm saying is the timing is not right. Now that we are beginning to see some accretion in reserves. I was looking at movement in foreign reserves, yeah. Yes, recently. As of yesterday, external reserves have gone above $38 billion. Yes. The gross, that's $8 billion. Liquid, that's $7.9 billion. Okay, so you have sufficient reserves to finance many months of imports. And the central bank governor, has always assured that the central bank has enough to meet genuine demands for forex. Okay, so why do we have to tow that path now? See, devaluation comes with a lot of implications, and if we are doing that, we should consider not just the people say in the medium to in the long term. In the long term, the negative effects will peter out. Okay, for me, that's wishful thinking. Because just as John Maynard Keynes observed, the famous economist, in the long run, we are all dead. What are the near-term implications of devaluing the Naira? Let me even start with the issue of fuel imports. We're still importing fuel. If you devalue the Naira today, you can imagine what will happen to pump price of fuel. It will dislocate a lot of things. You can imagine what will happen to even public sector wages. Do you think if we devalue today, the Naira today, that there will be agitations for increase in minimum wage? So
yes, because it will decrease the purchasing power of people.
Yes. So if you devalue now, the only benefit I see with that is that government Naira. Yes, states and local governments and federal governments in terms of Naira, will increase. But of course, that would come at a cost. Of what benefit is having increase in Naira when the purchasing power of that Naira is almost gone? So what you gain by way of increase in having increased Naira, you lose, because number one, consumption is going to drop. So the revenue you're going to get from VAT will drop. Okay, and I've also said if it results in agitations of increasing public sector wages, for example, and you increase public sector wages, again you also lose. So what you are gaining with the right hand, you're also losing. Mm. So at the end of the day, you realize that it's an ill wind that is going to blow this government no good. Mm. Okay, so I don't recommend devaluing the Naira at this point. As I said, the fundamentals, China, for example.
I was coming to that.
Yeah, China is a net exporting country, so it will make sense for China to devalue.
But they've always denied it, and President Donald Trump hit them so hard during his tenure.
Yes, I'm even saying it will make sense for a country like China.
Yes, because they export a lot, they produce.
Exactly.
And that was why they were doing it, but they were denying it officially that they were not devaluing their Naira, their yuan.
Yes.
And President Trump came at them like crazy, because they were having it to their own advantage.
Exactly.
And the Chinese did not even care.
Yes, because it made a lot of sense to devalue. But so what is that prescription? You know, is this one we say is not a cap. How
cap,
do we?
One cap fits all.
One cap fits all. Yes. So that prescription for China, you know, doesn't find
How about the
application
argument of
for
market forces? Allow the naira to find its feet. Allow the naira to float. Because what we're doing now is a managed float, as it were.
Managed float, yes.
Yeah, so how about those that are saying and accusing even the Central Bank of Nigeria, allow this naira to just find its feet. Let market forces decide.
Nancy, when we say market forces, what do we mean?
Buying and selling.
Yes,
Demand and supply.
Demand and supply. Is that not so? Yes. And market forces, demand and supply, you know, will establish what we call the equilibrium price. The price that's the exchange rate. Okay, the price of our currency in relation to another currency. Okay, but that is when you have demand and supply on a level playing field. On a level playing field, if you have two boxers, you don't pair a heavyweight and a featherweight. That would be
Tyson Fury and someone else.
Beautiful. That's just an analogy I can give. You have the demand for dollars, you know, so much, outstripping supply. What's the major source of supply that we have? You know, crude. By way of foreign investments, we haven't got much. Okay, so as I said, if you have a situation in which, you know, one of the numbers I saw, you know, not too long ago, in which on a quarterly basis you have the demand for dollar to the tune of $4 billion, and you have supply about $800 million. So if you match $4 billion against $800 million, you continue. Yes, you can't say you want to float. You can't float, because if you say market forces should determine, okay, there will always be you know, a problem. I saw a study, and Nancy, you can also give it to me. I've supervised a number of you know, works, thesis, even in this area. Okay, a particular one that looked at the impact of Naira devaluation on the manufacturing sector of the economy. Okay, that study found, you know, unequivocally that Naira devaluation has negative impact on capacity utilization, on output, and on job creation. Okay, so anything we are doing should be, in my view, evidence-based. Okay, and this, I'm not talking about just short run, both in the short run and the long run. So it should be evidence-based. So we shouldn't just say, let's devalue, investors will come if we devalue. For me, that's wishful thinking. What evidence do we have that if we devalue, that investors will actually...
You know, what you just said now,
yes,
took me back to many years ago when President Yaradua was there. I think from Obasanjo days to Yaradua to even Jonathan. We saw the way foreign investors came into the country. And what you were just saying just brought me to, did we have a devalued Naira at that time that we saw foreign investors coming? Because at that time, Naira was a bit stable.
It is stability.
Yes.
Investors,
really
is about stability.
Yeah.
It's about stability. It's about stability. That's it. And it's also about other factors that, you know, investors watch out for. It's a function of many factors, not just the exchange rate. You have insecurity, for example. Okay. You have your state of infrastructure. You know, for example, you have the business climate generally. You know, the ease of doing business generally. These are things that attract you know, investors. Okay, so it's not just about exchange rate. And let me tell you something too. If we fix our economy properly, these investors, you don't even need to go to tell them to come. On their own, they will come because they are after return on investment. And the moment, if devaluation will bring about, even in the near term, of course in the near term that's what is going to happen, a jump in inflation rate. As we speak, inflation rate is elevated at 17%. So if devaluation results in a higher inflation rate, what will happen to return on investment, even from the domestic point of view? The real rate of return will become negative, of course, it's even negative now, it will increase. And that will discourage investment. And Nancy, I want to also say, say this. I don't see the Central Bank of Nigeria, of course the MPC of the Central Bank, okay, continuing this accommodative monetary policy into 2022. I am foreseeing a situation in which by March next year, the current MPR of 11.5% will be adjusted upwards. Because of, the central bank will then see the need to rein in inflation. Especially, you can imagine what will happen if we devalue. If you devalue and inflation goes up, what will happen? Interest rates will also go up because the central bank will operate to fight inflation, so interest rates will go up. And if interest rates go up, you will now find cost of funds also going up. Banks will reprice their loans. And once banks reprice their loans, what will happen? This issue of non-performing loans again, all the prudential ratios will start going bad. So you see, the thing is hydra-headed. And that's why we have to be very cautious about.
I think I need to do another show on this Naira devaluation.
Yes, it's
or perhaps do a series on it.
Yes.
Or a town hall. So
I think a town hall will be better, so that you can also have the benefit of exactly pros and cons. You have people on the other side.
We'll look into that and see, because I know so many school of thought on this, especially putting the peculiarity of our own economy.
Yes.
Because some people will say, okay, it's the trade deficit, it narrows the trade deficit, that's for devaluation and all that. It can also help your debt, it reduces and all of that. But I don't know. Does it reduce the debt? Some people will argue that.
When you devalue,
$2 million
see the total debt we are having now, public debt by the DMO, about 35
trillion naira.
Okay, 35 trillion naira. And remember, this also includes the foreign component.
Component of it. Yeah.
Yes, at 410. So the moment you devalue, the naira, even though you service your foreign debts in dollars, but the naira equivalent of what you are owing outside will be higher. So these are the considerations. And there's another angle too to what was said, the part about the central bank discontinuing this demand management strategy that is using, restricting access to forex with respect to certain items. It was also said central bank should actually liberalize. You don't have to restrict access to forex. Okay, but again, you also come to think of it. Why was it done in the first instance? Was it not to manage the demand for dollars? If you have products that can be produced here in the country, okay, was it not meant to encourage the production of those products here within the country? So by the time you lift those restrictions, I just shudder at what will happen to the exchange rate.
So what was the solution, Prof, in all of this quagmire? And, what we really find ourselves.
Yes.
Is there a solution in sight?
There's a solution in sight. And that solution can be looked at from two perspectives. First, remember, exchange rate is a function of demand and supply, basically. So you look at it from the demand side and the supply side. Okay? Now, on the demand side, what do we do? On the demand side, I want to support the current practice of import substitution, which the central bank is also supporting, using the indirect measure that is applying. And on the demand side too, we need to look inwards. We need to patronize locally made goods. We need to reduce our penchant for foreign goods. So the import dependency must be, become a thing of the past on the demand side. So we need to reduce the demand. If we reduce the demand for foreign goods, of course, the pressure on the dollar won't be there. Okay, so if we reduce medical tourism, education tourism, going abroad to treat headache.
That sounds like the president should take the lead with medical tourism. So because he's always going to London for checkup. So whether I should start from the president and his, others. Yes,
but that of the president. Well, let me not.
You don't want to go there.
Let me not go there. But I think we need our president. We need our president to be strong. For us to be able to discharge his duties well. He needs to be strong to be able to fix the economy. So if he's getting some
No, the school of thought is, it's
yes.
not that you shouldn't go, but
Yes.
the school of thought is also strengthening your health system. And this was the same. I don't want to go into that.
Yes, I'm saying that we need a
topic,
strong
though.
person to strengthen the health system. Okay, but let's not...
That's a topic for another day.
Topic for another day. But as I said, if we can curb the demand, that will reduce the pressure. On the supply side too, the solution is simple. Okay, we need to diversify our sources of forex, so we don't need to continue to depend on. And I think this is known by the government. The government recognizes that there's need to boost supply and also curtail demand. But I have not seen the, if you like, the political will to really implement the issues around the curbing demand. We still patronize, even at the government level, we still patronize foreign goods. We still purchase, do a lot of, look at the budget, 2022 budget proposal. It has a lot of dollar-denominated, capital expenditure. Okay, you find some MDAs or even saying they want to buy cars. Okay, those cars are not produced here now. Okay,
and they are
of
not
course
going to be the locally assembled, or even
no, they are not locally
cars,
exactly
as it were.
Exactly. So they are, and that will further put pressure on the exchange. So the solution is to look at it from the demand side and also look at it from the supply side. By the time we have done that, we can now say, okay, Naira, go ahead and fight. We can now go into the ring with the dollar. Exactly. But until we do that, the consequences, are better imagined.
Let's take a look at this 2022 budget, the parameters, just like you wanted to say earlier. But I had to bring it to this Naira devaluation because that's, it's really in the space right now.
Yes.
And I think, like I said earlier, we're still going to expand on it on the show and see, let us really what are really the solutions in addition to what you said, getting the pros and the cons. But let's take a look at the priorities of this 2022 budget according to Mr. President. This budget is a budget of economic growth and sustainability coming in from a budget of economic resilience or so in 2020. Speak to me about the parameters and what you think.
Nancy, I'll speak to you about parameters, but before then something just crossed my mind, maybe I should mention it in terms of the solution. Now, given our trade volume with China, is it possible that we try to have in our reserves more of Chinese yuan, renminbi, and one of the ways by which we can do that is to issue panda bonds, okay, such that we can even reduce the pressure on the dollar, do away with this third currency in a sense. So if we issue panda bonds and get yuan, for example, a lot of our businessmen who trade with China can use that. That was the intention behind the currency swap, but the size was small, and as we speak, I don't know, what the update is. So I think we should think towards that, issuing panda bonds, as I said, to reduce the pressure on the dollar. And in terms of also taking loans, I will also advise that we de-emphasize Euro bonds, okay, because they are quite expensive, and see whether we can. The panda bonds, as I said, panda bonds are known to be cheaper than Euro bonds. So we de-emphasize Euro bonds and do more of bilateral. These loans we take from China, for example, if they can come as yuan, okay, that will go a long way to reduce the pressure on the Naira. Now, talking about the 2022 budget proposal, I think the benchmarks, the oil price, $57 per barrel. If you consider what the oil price is now, over $80 per barrel. Yes, and then look at the average for the year, around $70 per barrel. And if you factor in the World Bank estimates, the International Agency Administration estimates that talk about an average of...
that's the IE, International Energy
yes.
Administration.
Yes. So all the estimates are in excess of $60 per barrel. So I think $57 is conservative, is okay. But the 1.88 million
those that
output,
said we should increase it because of how oil prices...
Yes, of course, if we increase it, we reduce the budget deficits, substantially. But again, when you're doing budgeting, the word there is conservatism. So it's good to do 57. If you're doing, of course, if it's doing excess then that you're better for it. Remember too that oil revenue is not just oil price, it's also the output. 1.88 million
barrels.
Yes, yes. Given our experience, appear on the high side because we've not. Yes, the second quarter of this year, the 2021 budget was based on 1.86. Second quarter, the thing fell to 1.6, and that was why oil revenue for the first half year, actually dropped. So 1.88 may appear on the high side, but I hope that with the PIA, with the increased quota by OPEC, we should be able to get that. But inflation rates, with what is happening now, with costs around devaluation, with the Petroleum Industry Act coming into effect mid next year, I don't think 13% inflation rate is yes, it's not. Even in this year, inflation rate is 11.95, but see where inflation rate is. So I don't think it's real. The other one too that I think is ambitious is the growth rate of 4.2% real GDP. I also think it's ambitious, again, given the where we are, and also given the fact that even if you look at the budget per se, substantial part is also going to recurrent expenditure. So we may not really get growth rate as high as 4.2 in 2022. But by and large, I think it's a good document. But for the few things I've observed in that document, which I expect the National Assembly to really interrogate, I think it's a good document. One of the few things I've observed there, in the appropriation bill, is in the service-wide votes. Okay, where you have service-wide votes, a contingency of 30 billion is provided there. Contingency that used to be 20 billion is now 30 billion. So we don't have justification for such provisions. If you also go to capital supplementation side, you find contingency of 15 billion, you find adjustment to capital cost, you find exigencies, you find things that you can't really justify their inclusion, and which defeats the essence of zero-based budgeting. Yeah, so I think the National Assembly should interrogate that document very well, and of course accord it speedy consideration and approval, so that by January it should kick in. Okay.
So much to talk about. The president said it's a gender-responsive budget.
That's another positive side of the budget.
Gender-responsive budget.
And the innovative financing schemes I also noticed in the budget. The president talked about, scaling up PPP and sovereign green bond program. So those innovative financing schemes are there. But I would also expect that the issue of privatization should be given more more attention, because the privatization proceeds in the budget is just 90 billion and it's very small. So let's privatize more, especially through the capital markets, and also do what I call use a lot of what I call what is known as asset securitization in infrastructure financing.
Thank you very much, Prof. So much to talk about. We can't dissect this enough. But just like you said, the work is now on the table of the National Assembly for them to dissect the budgets. The federal government, the National Assembly, as an MDA, if you don't make money, don't come. If you want money, tell us how much you're making.
Precisely.
Yes, which I think is good. Thank you very much, Prof, for coming.
Thank you, Nancy.
Let's do this sometime again, especially with what we said. I think we've got to plan that and see how it goes. Thank you very much, Prof. I've been speaking with Professor Uche Uwaleke, who is a professor of capital market, also the former commissioner of finance in IMO State. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for joining us today. Please join us again tomorrow. I am Nancy Naji on behalf of my team and I. Have a fantastic day. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye now.